Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happens every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Carolyn.
And I'm Danielle. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
We finally got outside in nature this weekend.
Oh my gosh. I feel like my body got to reset. Just spending the weekend outside, not a worry in the world. It was so nice.
We camped with our friends Meg and Paul, which was great. July 4th in Colorado is a tough one to camp because it gets really crowded.
Any summer holiday.
All of us city folks in Denver try to get out into the mountains and try to find somewhere to camp, and it gets really, really crowded, but we luckily found a spot.
And it was a great spot. This year, our spot was kind of in between Gunnison, Crested Butte.
Crested Butte is my favorite Colorado town that we've been to. I would love to have a home there.
Yeah, wouldn't we all?
They go hard for 4th of July. So after their parade, the street is still shut down, the main street in Crested Butte. There was a DJ up on a huge stage. She was playing rave music.
It was literally like a day rave.
And people of all ages were going wacko tobacco. They were going for it.
I feel like in the past, we usually leave on the 4th because that's usually how the weekend falls.
Yes.
But this year, it being on a Thursday, we got in Wednesday night. So we were there for the 4th. And I thought after the parade, people would just clear out. And we were definitely mistaken.
Wrong. We were wrong. People were partying.
Our dog Scout was not a fan of the craziness in the street. The poor thing. She was a little stressed out.
We have talked about Scout a few times now. She's our dog. But can you just give us a profile of Scout? Because I know she is your favorite being. She's your favorite being in the world.
You're my favorite living being in the world. I hate when you say that, but Scout is up there. Scout is our dog. She looks like a short-haired border collie, but she's definitely a mutt. We got her as a rescue dog. Once she gets to know you, she loves you as a person, like people in general.
But she will bark in your face.
She has high stranger danger, as you like to say.
And she learned that from one of her parents. And it's not me. So I'll let the listeners figure out who she learned her stranger danger from, which is not the worst thing in the world.
Scout is just on the lookout at all times.
Yeah.
There were a few people that approached her without asking, and she lost it and barked in their face. And the one guy I didn't see coming, and Scout was just laying there. We were in a shady spot waiting for you, Meg, to come back. And a guy went up to say hi, and she just started barking in his face and made a scene. But just a good thing to know. Ask before you try to pet someone's dog. I know we're not a dog podcast. I think it's just a good general life rule. We met like a 3-year-old on the trail hiking with her family. And she even asked, "Can I pet your dog?" And we had to tell her no, which was so sad because she really wanted...
She was trying so hard not to pet Scout. So Scout looks very friendly.
And Scout is the cutest dog you'll ever see.
Yes,
the cutest.
We're a little biased. But she looks like she wants to be pet. She'll look at you, she'll smile, and then you approach her, and then she's like, don't take one step closer.
Yep.
I always say that Scout has some daddy issues because she likes to be ignored. And once you ignore her and you look away and you put your hand out and she comes to you, then you're besties. The amount of conversations that we have, I would say a third of our time is talking about this podcast. A third of our time is talking about Scout. And then our third of our time is talking about everything else in life.
That's a good assessment.
Would you say that's right?
That's a pretty good assessment. She really is such a great dog, and I admittedly a little obsessed with her.
You are obsessed. She's sitting on the ground right now as we record.
Yes.
She really likes to hear our voices, which is very interesting.
She just sleeps in here next to us. With camping, I think Scout really likes it because she sleeps in the tent with us. There's a lot of people who don't live in Colorado who always ask, what do you mean you're camping? Like, what does that mean? Are you glamping? Where do you sleep? And I'm like, no, you sleep in a tent. And sometimes you find a campground with a toilet that's basically a hole in the ground that is not the most glamorous thing.
Nope.
No running water. And sometimes you find dispersed. Luckily, we found a campground with spots and it had
a fire pit and
a place to go to the bathroom. So that was nice.
Yeah, but those bathrooms after a July 4th weekend, I'd rather go outside.
I know. What do you feel about tent life?
You're laughing because you know the answer. If we had money, I would not be camping in a tent.
We would be Airbnb-ing.
We would be Airbnb-ing. We would be glamping. A glamp I could take. It is the sleeping situation that does it for me. I love being outside. I don't mind sleeping outside. I like to sleep with noise.
sound of the river
Yes.
was so nice.
Yes, all of that is great. Sleeping on the ground is the worst thing in the whole entire world. I cannot get comfortable. I flip like a rotisserie chicken all night, so that's not great when you're sleeping on a sleeping pad on the ground and it makes noise and you're in a sleeping bag, which is hard to move around in. Yeah, if we had just a bit more disposable income, I would be really pushing for the glamping lifestyle.
The other thing is there's no running water, like I said, so you don't shower for a few days.
Yeah.
We did camp next to a river, and you, me, and Meg would literally go in the river with a bar of soap.
Yes.
And just, rinse off every night. And it was
Get the
very
important
peaceful
parts.
and fun, and, just having a drink by the river and
Showering.
bathing. Hey, it doesn't get much better than that. It was beautiful.
Is that your least favorite part, the dirty part? Because I don't mind being dirty at all.
I know you don't.
I could be a stinky gal forever.
And you know me, if I shower twice a day, it's a good day. I don't shower twice every day, but I at least shower once every day, and not showering really, not my favorite.
You aim for a twice a day shower.
Yeah.
That would be your ideal.
Yes.
I aim for a no time a day shower.
Yeah, you're really revealing a lot about yourself on this episode.
I just like to be stinky. I don't know why. I think showers are a waste of time. I know that's a really unpopular opinion, but I know there's other stinky gals out there.
There's
like
definitely
me.
listeners who would agree with both of us. So I guess we'll see.
Let us know in the comments if you're a stinky gal or a clean gal.
I wonder if it's a couple rule. Like, is there someone in a
Ooh.
couple who really likes to shower and another person who would rather just not shower ever?
We do have these couple things
With
where
like
this happens.
cereal, a lot of milk or not a lot of milk we've talked
Yes.
about, or are you a loud puker or a silent puker?
Okay.
So I
now
wonder
we
if
have to
this
talk through these,
falls
though.
into this category.
What kind of cereal person are you? Do you put a lot of milk or a little bit of milk?
I put a lot of milk.
Yeah, you drench it and then want to slurp it up after. And I put just enough milk to get everything that there's none left. And then when we vomit, which this is TMI, but in every couple, there is a person who screams when they vomit. And then there's a person who is like so super silent.
I didn't know this was a thing until I met you. Carolyn, you actually yell into the toilet. Like, I've seen you break blood vessels in your eyes by screaming into the toilet. It is the scariest thing. It's like the exorcism.
I know.
Early-
It's like a demon coming out.
Early in our dating life, you got a virus.
Yeah.
You were living at your mom's at the time, and I was going to sleep over that night, and you started throwing up, and you were like, you gotta go.
I was like, you can't see me like this. My mom is here to take care of me, and I just can't have you here while I scream into the
Yes.
toilet.
And I don't make noise when
Yeah.
I puke. So
So-
now we need to know, if you're in a relationship, please let us know. Maybe we'll have to put a poll.
Yeah. And even if you're not in a relationship, let us know if you like to shower or you don't like to shower. Because if you're not in a relationship and you like to shower, then you need to find the person who doesn't like to shower, and that's your perfect
No,
match.
I would
Yeah.
prefer that you showered.
If you are a loud vomiter, you should put on your dating profile that you're looking for a soft vomiter, because I think those two pairs make a good couple.
Soulmates.
All right, let's get into the episode.
Let's talk about some highlights from the week. What do you got?
The NWSL, we have to talk about the Orlando Pride and the Kansas City Current. They played last Saturday. The Orlando Pride beat the Kansas City Current 2-1.
And I know we talked about this last episode, but can you give a brief overview of why this game was so fun going into it?
Both of these teams were unbeaten coming into this match. So they had not lost a match in this regular season at all. They had some draws mixed in there. Kansas City was sitting at the top of the table. Orlando Pride was in the second position. On top of that, Orlando Pride has Barbara Banda, who still has the most amount of goals scored in the league, and Temwa Chawanga from Kansas City, who also still has the most amount of goals scored in this league. So it was them going at each other. It was the two teams going at each other, and they were unbeaten going into the game.
Crazy.
And it was played at CPKC Stadium. We've talked about this stadium in a previous episode. It's a great place to play.
Great fan base.
Great
looks like.
fan base, sold out crowd. We need to go to a game. When we were watching the game, we were Google mapping the number of hours. It's only 8.5 hours away from us. I need to go see a game there.
Yes.
In the game, Barbara Banda for the Orlando Pride scores in the 37th minute. 2 minutes later, Temwa Chawinga on the Kansas City Current scores in the 39th minute. Barbara Banda was ahead of Temwa Chawinga for 2 minutes.
Literally, I remember like we were watching, you were going nuts when Barbara Banda scored. And then Temwa just bolts down the field, makes unbelievable. I think she bypassed like 4 defenders.
Yes, we were trying to count them.
The move she put on and then scores. She was like, no way are you taking this away from me. We're going to stay head to head here.
It felt personal. I've said this about Kansas City before. They look like they have little Mario Kart power boosts, and that's what Temwa Chawinga had, and she just bursted down the field.
And I'm sure it was more that they were down 1-0 and she was like, we better score. But it's pretty cool that it was those two.
Ooh, another poll we have to put up is, do you say Mario Kart or Mario Kart? Because
I actually do say Mario. You were just confusing me.
Okay, maybe that's part of a relationship too. Someone who says Mario and someone who says Mario. Anyway, in the 42nd minute, Carrie Lawrence on the Pride received her second yellow card, which in soccer, 2 yellow cards is a red card.
Brutal.
And she was removed from the game. So the Orlando Pride are now playing with 10. In my head, I was like, ooh, Kansas City does a really good job at scoring. There's no way Orlando Pride with 10 players is going to make this work. I was wrong. Orlando Pride's defense was great. And in the 60th minute, goalie AD Franch for the Kansas City Current made contact with Adriana from the Orlando Pride.
That call was kind of questionable to me. As a former goalie myself, it looked like she was going at the ball and took out the player. It happens. I didn't love that call.
It did not look purposeful to me. However, I think anytime when you're making contact with someone's face and the ball's not there, they're calling that a foul.
Yeah.
Usually they give the benefit of the doubt to the goalie. They called it a foul. It was a foul in the box. AD Franch got a yellow card for the contact to the face. Who comes in and shoots the penalty? The one and only Marta. So Marta on the Orlando Pride takes a penalty. She scores. Orlando Pride is up 2-1. That is how the game ends.
I was happy someone won because like
Yes.
I said last episode, it would have been very anticlimactic if they tied.
Yes.
And we're still unbeaten. I didn't realize how intense Marta was. Like
she was
after the game,
screaming.
she was screaming into the crowd and just like 2 fists. She was going nuts.
Yes. I think Kansas City is going to remember all of this. I've heard people say before that you learn more from losses than you do for wins. And I think this is definitely going to be a learning point for Kansas City. And that feeling of being beat at your home stadium, I think is also an opportunity for a lot of learning. I don't know. I would be scared to play Kansas City again, but Orlando Pride unbeaten. They move on to 11-0-5, and the KC Current are 10-1-5. Orlando Pride move up into that number 1 spot into the standings. The NWSL regular season games are now on break until after the Olympics. They will resume on August 23rd.
That is a very long break, but understandable because on Saturday's game, Marta went down and they were saying, you cannot afford to get hurt right now or you could get taken off the team. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
For some players who are not going to the Olympics, like Temwa Chawinga, for example, will not be playing in the Olympics. She's from Malawi. They didn't make it into the Olympics this year. I wonder how she feels about that. Like having now a month break, I'm sure it's good for your body, but if you're in a groove of scoring goals and things like that, that must just be really, really difficult. And this break is really an opportunity, a good opportunity for those teams who are working to get their stuff together to take this time and really work on it. Some of their players may be on national teams, but for the majority of teams, they're going to have most of their players there. And there's been so many coaching changes. Like this month, I think is going to be very welcome for some people. But for those at the top who have momentum, I wonder how it may affect them.
That's a great point.
Let's get into the WNBA.
I'll start with Caitlin Clark. She became the first rookie in WNBA history with a triple-double. This was also the first player in Fever franchise history to do this. She ended the game with 19 points, 13 assists, and 12 rebounds. This also helped the Fever beat the New York Liberty 83-78 this past Saturday. I mean, that's a huge win
for sure
for that team. I saw Caitlin Clark in the press conference after and they were talking about it. And she did give kudos to the team of 13 assists means my teammates had to score on 13 of my passes. Like that doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
And honestly, just a huge win. They had lost to New York Liberty 3 times already this season. There was also a press conference with Sabrina Ionescu, who obviously was not happy with the loss. loss, and she made a reference that this was like the Fever's Super Bowl. So them winning that game.
Talk, Sabrina.
And of course, people in the comments were going at her, but I'm like, she's not just going to be happy they lost. She said it's hard to beat a team 4 times. These teams play each other so much in the WNBA because
this is why we need expansion, and we're going to
get it.
It's
happening. But it's just an exciting win for the Fever overall, and very cool to become the first rookie in WNBA history to have a triple-double.
It's important for the Fever to know that they can beat teams like the Liberty, to get a little bit of a confidence boost, to be like, on any given day, if we play the way that we can play, we can pull this off and make something work.
And we say it all the time. It doesn't matter who starts off hot. It matters who continues to stay hot or who heats up going into playoffs. It will be interesting because like the NWSL, the WNBA will have to go on a break for the Olympics. So I'm sure it's welcome for the rookies who came out of college and went right into their season. For them, I would think they're welcoming this long-awaited break. But outside of that, the next highlight I would like to discuss is Angel Reese. Angel Reese is officially the double-double queen.
The queen.
The queen. She now has 13 consecutive double-doubles and surpassed Candace Parker's previous record of 12.
She's putting up Rookie of the Year numbers.
Oh, absolutely. It's really unbelievable what she's been doing. This past Friday night, she finished with a career high 27 points and 10 rebounds, which got her 12th double-double. And then on Sunday, they ended up losing to the Seattle Storm 84-71. But Angel Reese finished with 17 points and 14 rebounds.
Not only is she putting Rookie of the Year numbers up, but she is being dominant.
Absolutely. And I've talked about this before. It's so interesting to see who from college will excel in the pros. And this goes for any sport, any gender, because sometimes you have this all-star college player who you think is going to do amazing things and ends up being okay. And then you have someone like Angel who was drafted 7 overall, and she looks like the number 1 draft pick.
And I think there was some concern about how her game would translate to the WNBA. Yeah. It has just been working, and she's learning as she goes. And there's definitely room for
all the rookies.
Yes, there's definitely room for improvement. But man, 13 consecutive double-doubles and just rolling.
It's really been fun to watch her play. Then you have Asia Wilson, who became the all-time leading scorer for the Las Vegas Aces on Sunday. She ended the game with 28 points and 10 rebounds, and the Aces ended up beating the Dallas Wings 104-85. She now has 4,301 career points and passed Sophia Young-Malcolm, who had 4,300 for the Aces. So now Asia is the leading scorer for Aces franchise history, which is unreal.
We're going to be talking about her for a really, really long time because she's going to continue to break these records, not only for the Aces, but across the WNBA.
On Instagram, I saw in the locker room after the game, the whole team was just dousing her with water. And the way she was leaping through the locker room, just smiling and laughing. That team, we've talked about them before, just has so much fun. And it was just pure joy.
And when the best person on your team can be so complimentary of the other players around them, can have fun, can celebrate, it creates such a positive locker room. And they have such a good mix of vets and vets who don't necessarily play on the team, but are important to the team because of what they offer. Then they have people who are in the middle of their career, and then they have rookies, and it's just this perfect little matching together, and they're just the most fun team to watch.
All right, the next highlight we would like to discuss is Wimbledon. I know tennis is your area of expertise, Carolyn, so what would you like to highlight?
I can't say I'm an expert in tennis, but I am a super fan. So Wimbledon.
I will just say, I saw you build out a whole diagram for Meg this weekend at the brewery because she asked how the scoring works in tennis. So I'm pretty sure you're the most expert out of anyone I know.
That's very sweet. And yes, I did create a diagram of how points, games, sets, and matches work and tried to do it from the ground up to explain. And I think it worked.
Yeah.
In Wimbledon, Aryna Sabalenka did not even play in Wimbledon. She was out due to injury. Then we have Marketa Vondrousova, who won Wimbledon last year and was knocked out in the first round.
That's insane.
Then you have Iga Swiatek, who lost in the third round, who was on a 21-game winning streak. Which brings us into this round of 16. Emma Navarro from the U.S., she's ranked number 19 in the world, versus Coco Gauff, number 2 in the world. This is Coco's opportunity. You don't have the heavy hitters that you usually have playing in this, and she lost the match to Emma Navarro.
Yes. And I think this plays into what we've talked about is how tennis is so mental. It's almost like, okay, I got this in the bag now.
Yeah.
I have no idea what Coco was thinking, but you just mentioned all these top players were out. Maybe she had the thought of like, this is mine to win, but she unfortunately just did not play well.
And in Ted Lasso, they call it like the case of the yips. Like where,
and that's like a softball term I grew up knowing.
Yeah, where things just don't go right and it's hard to figure out why. And it almost starts to feel like you're cursed. And that's why they say it's like a case of the yips. I'm not saying that's happening.
Yeah. But she was clearly frustrated,
yes,
going to her box and her coach and just saying like, hands up, tell me something.
She kept saying that over and over.
And I looked to you and I was like, what is she asking? I don't get, what does she want them to say?
Well, we talk about this in tennis a lot. It's an individual sport and you have a team, right? And I think when it just starts getting so difficult, and she had so many errors where she was just hitting it into the net, it was so frustrating. It's on you to do what you need to do, but you're looking to your box and you're like, can you just help me? Because I'm not helping myself at all here. When you start looking externally is also when things start to go downhill. So she ended up losing the match in 2 sets. The scores were 6-4, 6-3. I also think it's incredibly difficult to play someone from your country.
Yeah.
They mentioned that they had practiced together before. They know each other. I also think when you're playing someone from the US, you know what a US player brings, because someone from the US brings something different than someone from Russia. There are different cultural norms of what you know you're going to get, or someone from Switzerland. They both knew what the other was going to bring. And I think that only is a benefit to Emma Navarro, who had an amazing match.
She played really well.
She made no mistakes.
And just looked very composed.
So composed. You know who wasn't composed?
Her dad.
Her dad.
I love seeing the parents in any sporting event because it is impressive that for parents to stay so composed.
Yes.
And he wasn't yelling or anything.
No.
But just the way he kept readjusting his seat, it looked like he was biting his arm with his face in his arms, just trying to like maintain composure. And we've talked about Coco's dad usually just paces around the stadium.
Yes.
Like he can't even sit and watch. So it's just funny. I can't imagine how stressful that would be if that was my kid.
The fact that they look towards the box so much, you have to keep a composed face.
Oh, for sure. I know when I played sports in high school, my dad always held a plastic water bottle in his hand, and the whole game he would just crunch the water bottle because that's his way of staying composed, and it's better than being the parent who's screaming in the stands. So every parent has their thing. We'll have to think about that when we have kids.
So a little background on Emma Navarro. She went to University of Virginia, which was interesting because she could have not gone to college and just started touring immediately, but she decided to go to college. She played for 2 seasons and she won the NCAA championships singles title in 2021 as a freshman. After her 2 years there, she joined the tour and has been climbing the ranks steadily, and she looked really, really good. 23 years old. She is playing Jasmine Paolini, who we've talked about on this podcast before, in the quarterfinals today when the podcast releases.
I think going to college is a nice option. And for me, like, college was some of the best years of my life. And I'm sure being a D1 athlete, it's a little more intense than my schedule, but still, I think it's an opportunity to mature more. It's an opportunity to make friends and just to play in that type of environment. I think it's cool that she chose that route.
And tour life has to be a beatdown.
Oh, yeah.
And you're traveling so much. You're traveling solo so much. Mm-hmm. You're working to try to scrap together money to be able to pay your coaches. And there's a lot of pressure to advance on into rounds so that you can continue to make money. Doing that as a teenager, which Coco has done, has to be incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Coco has a really good team around her to help support her through that. And the option to go to college, and it might not even be tennis experience, but life experience and maturity, I think can be really, really helpful.
So we'll be excited to see the rest of Wimbledon.
Let's get into our deep dive today. Tell us about it.
Today, I wanted to talk about the history of women in the Olympic Games. We've been talking a ton about the Olympics with it coming up in just a few weeks. We have certainly come a long way from the start of the Olympics. Mm-hmm. When the Olympics first started, no female participation was granted in any sport. And then we went to minimal female participation.
Yeah.
And now where we are today, believe it or not, the Olympics has become the largest gender equal sporting event in the world, which is really cool. Women first competed in the Olympic Games in 1900 in Paris.
Oh, cool.
Which is really cool because we'll be back in Paris this year. In 1900, women represented just 2.2% of total athletes. Only 22 athletes out of 997 competitors were women.
When was the first Olympics?
So the first modern Olympics took place in 1896, and they were actually held in Athens, Greece.
We have been to Greece before. We went on
our honeymoon.
And we actually got to see the Panathinaikos Stadium, which held the opening and closing ceremonies for that first modern Olympic Games.
That was so cool because we ended our honeymoon in Athens, and that was the only day you came on a run with me. And we ran past the stadium and took some selfies outside, which is so cool to see. It was like...
It's an all marble stadium.
Oh, that's what it was. I was thinking of all marble, and just right in Athens. And Athens is a massive city.
1896 was the first modern Olympics. 1900, women were allowed to compete.
That's pretty good.
Only 22 of them. They had the first Olympics in 1896. No women were allowed to compete. And then 4 years later, they were like, okay, we should probably bring some women in. That's
a lot better than most leagues can say. I was actually surprised to see it only took one Olympic Games before they were like, okay, we should grant women this opportunity.
But the original Olympics goes all the way back to 776 BC in Greece. I learned in our research, which I have to point this out. Yeah. In the original Olympics, all of the athletes competed naked.
And I know you wish that was still a thing.
I do wish it was still a thing. Is it pervy?
Yes. Maybe we should cut that.
No, I don't think it's pervy. So the ESPN Bodies issue is my favorite issue of any magazine ever. I love to see athletic bodies, and I don't even know if it's in a sexual way. I am going to petition, and I know there's going to be a lot of pushback on this, but I am going to petition for bringing back naked Olympic Games. I need to see some butts. I need to see the whole leg. I want to see, I really want to see it all.
Good luck with that. With the modern day, so 1900, as we said, only 22 out of 997 of the competitors were women. Of those 22 women, they competed in 5 different sports during those Olympic Games. And those sports were tennis, sailing, croquet, equestrian, and golf.
Croquet. That must have been riveting to watch. All right, I'm coming at you with more fun facts. The first woman to win a gold medal at the Olympics, she was a countess, Helene de Portales, who was an American-born Swiss sailor. She was the first woman to win a gold medal. She competed in sailing, was part of a crew. Our listeners should look up her image because she does not look like an Olympian. She looks like an Olympian of the time of 1900, yes. But full dress. Thank you, Helene, for being the trailblazer.
It's one thing to be one of the first women to compete and win a medal, but to compete with men, that must have had its own set of challenges as well. But then you also have the individual who won the first gold medal for individual sport, which is your sport, tennis.
Saying that tennis is my sport is such a strong word because I'm so bad at tennis.
You're a big fan.
I'm a big fan. Also competing during the 1900 games was Charlotte Cooper, an English tennis player who won the women's tennis final in 2 sets to become the first woman to win an Olympic gold in an individual event and the first British woman to take home a medal. So from 22 athletes to now where we are, like
almost 50% now.
How did we get from 2.2% to where we are now?
There was a few things that came into play here. One of the big rules, which I think is a great rule, that the International Olympic Committee, also known as the IOC, they mandated this rule that any new sport seeking Olympic inclusion must feature women's competition. So that was as of 1991, the year you were born. So not that long ago.
Thank you for saying not that long ago.
Of course. If you're going to add a new sport to the Olympics nowadays, it must include a women's competition. You can't just have a men's sport.
Cool.
This was pivotal to obviously expanding female participation across the board, which I think is really cool. By the time you got to the 2012 London Olympics, women competed in every sport on the program for the first time in Olympic history.
That's a huge win.
Huge win for the Olympic Games. Fast forward to 2020 Tokyo Olympics, female athlete representation reached 48%. So at that point, we were nearly 50-50 in terms of women and men competing across the board in sports. And obviously this did not happen by mistake, right? The International Olympic Committee has done a lot of work to help get to this point. And I've really learned how progressive they've been over the years, which has been great to see. Mentioned Tokyo 2020 Olympics. This also introduced a rule change, which allowed one male and one female athlete to jointly carry their country's flag during the opening ceremony. So many people across the world watch the opening ceremony. So now you're seeing from each country a female representation and a male representation, which I think is phenomenal.
And for countries who may not have an emphasis on women's sports, they then can at least see a face
on a global stage.
Yes. Perhaps even watch them, which would be great.
Another crucial step the IOC has taken to promote gender equality just across the board is within its own governance structures.
Which I think is so important, because if you're doing it at the top, it's going to trickle down into everything else.
Women and men should both be making decisions about sports that include women and men. It should not be one-sided. So as of 2023, 41% of the IOC members are women. And this was a significant increase from previous years, which again, this really reflects their commitment to diversity across their leadership roles. The IOC also calls on national Olympic committees and international sports federations to strive for gender balanced representation in their leadership positions.
We talked about in a previous episode the treatment of women's soccer teams, and I feel like if you have more women on these decision-making bodies, it is natural women's voices will be elevated just a bit more.
Right.
Because
having
they know
a seat
the
at the
experience.
table. Having a seat at the table, correct.
Exactly.
They also put things in place to help these women to prepare for these positions. So they have initiated forums and training programs for women within these international federations, national federations, and the National Olympic Committees to help prepare them in middle and senior management positions to stand for election to leadership positions. So basically, they're looking at people in those middle level positions, saying, here are some resources that can help you go into these leadership positions. And I think that's so important, because they're not just saying like, do better, try to get people in those positions. They're also giving these resources to help women achieve that and to do it right.
Well, I love an uplifting story, because so many times when we talk on this podcast, we're talking about doom and gloom and how things can be better. And to see the IOC make so many strides towards more gender equality and gender equity is amazing.
While doing this research, I even got more excited for the Olympics, because I was like, they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're doing the things that most of the time I don't think get done to make sure we're setting people up for success across the board. As we look ahead to 2024 Paris Olympics that we've been talking about nonstop, each Olympic Games has shown progress toward a more inclusive and equitable sporting environment.
I love it. We can't wait.
Let's talk about what we're looking forward to this week.
I am still looking forward to tennis. Wimbledon continues to happen. Thursday, July 11th are the semifinals, and then Saturday, July 13th are the finals. The times are to be determined at the time that we are recording, so keep an eye out for that. It is literally anyone's game now in Wimbledon. Anyone can go and make a run and try to take it. What are you looking forward to this week, Dee?
So the international friendlies are taking place, and the U.S. women's national team has a match coming up on Saturday, July 13th at 3:30 p.m. against Mexico. And it is taking place in the good old Dirty Jers at Red Bull Arena.
I know from our analytics that we have a lot of listeners from New York and New Jersey,
aka our entire family.
You need to be going to this game. You should have your tickets now. That is it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports, rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Share the podcast with your friends, and keep sending us topics you want us to cover on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Thanks for joining us.
Au revoir.
Is that how you say it?
Yes.
I thought it was au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir.